Yes.
Recording is
Welcome to DXgov governance discussion for Wednesday, September 28th, 1500 UTC. Let me share my screen and get things started here. Sorry. Okay, but not this one. Let's go to this first. Yeah, so here's the agenda for today. Proposal roundup, a little less than the last couple of weeks, but there is, I guess, one that is live that we need to discuss here, so we can go over those. And then the two discussion items I wanted to hit on today were one, transitioning from GPV1 to CowSwap for buybacks. Dave had a post on that. And then, yeah, the restructuring and refocus phase one low-hanging fruit, which is actually a proposal that's already live here. And then, yeah, these also worth checking out. I think we would be good to maybe, I don't know if we'll have enough time for discussion, but maybe it would be good for those that wrote those and kind of posted them to give a brief brief overview of that. Okay, let's start with the proposal roundup. First on Mainnet, there is only one proposal that is boosted, which is another kind of cool proposal here. This is from Augusto, and it actually burns some of his rep, and it burns it down to 4%. And I guess the reason that Augusto had more than 4% was that he had gotten, looks like almost like 10,000 or 9,700 rep from just redeeming proposals that added schemes. I think most people might be familiar that when you use the contribution reward scheme on Mainnet or Gnosis Chain, you actually automatically get a small rep award just for any past proposal. On Mainnet, this is 500 rep, and then on Gnosis Chain, I think it's 100 rep. But I guess for the scheme registrar scheme, the amount awarded is much higher. It's 2,000 there. So you can see here, Augusto's burning it down to 4% there. Yeah, and so it's a kind of cool proposal. I think also sets a good precedent.
Can I send you something to read?
Sure. Like a check? Or?
Yeah.
Sure, Wayne, but maybe I'll. Okay, now let's switch to a Gnosis Chain. I guess no one has any objections to Augusto burning his rep. I think that's everybody okay with that. Okay, and yeah, some on Gnosis Chain, we have a couple buyback orders. We'll get to that in a second in discussion items in terms of how those are going. But yeah, we have a couple different contributor proposals here. SkyMine Labs, Sky has been, I think, 2 years and 2 months change contributing DXDAO here. And so this is for the DXBiz one. Then there's a day left to be able to vote on that. And then the other contributor proposals we have are Leonardo Bertiotti working on Swapper. This is a retrospective proposal for the second half of the proposal. And then there was a forward-looking proposal from Milan V working on some QA stuff there that is 3 more days to be voted on. And then there is 2 proposals. So a forward, I guess this is the end of part 2 of 1. Or part 1 of 2 from Wayne. So this is the second half of a previous proposal, and then the subsequent proposal right there is the forward-looking one for Wayne there. And then the big proposal that is live right now is the, before we get to that one, then there's also a DXgov governance 1.5 contracts audit. So this is the first payment of a potentially $30,000 audit. And so this is to audit what I think is DXgov team is calling Gov 1.5. So, Gov 1.0 is what we're doing now. Gov 2.0 is this new, is going to incorporate DXD and has a lot of other features to it. But the Gov 1.5 basically cleans up a lot of the existing Gov 1.0 contracts. So those I think were like written in 2018 2018, 2019. So there's a lot that those could be kind of cleaned up in terms of how Solidity development has moved over the last couple of years. And so this is being done by the Omega team. And the Omega team actually features a lot of people that had worked on those same DAO stack contracts too. So that's there. And yeah, this is the first payment for that. That's $10,000. And Ross had Ross posted this in the forum a couple days ago. And I don't know if he is here. I know he was on vacation recently, but yeah. That's the DXgov 1.5 contract audit. And then the last proposal that is live on Mainnet, let's find it here, is the Restructuring and Refocus Phase 1 low-hanging fruit. I always laugh when I see this photo here. Keenan as the submitter of this proposer, is the submitter of this proposal. Do you want to kind of maybe explain the process of how we got here and then what specifically the actions laid out here are?
Submitter and proposer.
Like the MEV, we need to separate those. The block proposer versus.
Happy to chat about this. So basically, I think most are up to date on this kind of initiative up until the signal proposal, of course, but we got here through the restructuring discussions. There's a variety of proposals. This one was posted on Chain Pass, I believe, a week and a half ago now on Chain. So there was a big discussion here in the forum. I'll put it in the chat if you haven't caught it for whatever reason. Basically running through some stipulations and kind of combining consensus via the on-chain forum, these calls and polls on the forum, and then obviously discussions in the forum, Discord, all of our regular social channels, as well as the calls. So that was kind of like a 1 week discussion period. And those of you that don't know, this is the low-hanging fruit. So it's supposed to be the less contentious kind of points. So we had a shorter kind of governance period. I believe it was 4 days in the forum, 5 days in the forum before the signal proposal was submitted. So that signal proposal has now been submitted. It's actually boosted now. You can vote on it, which I'll put in the chat here. Chris is actually looking at it. Highly recommend voting on this with what you believe, for or against. High voter participation here would be great to have, but let me quickly go through some context for the actual conditions. First of all, kind of the first and second are DXgov will impose an event and auditing budget targeting 150K annually. I'm just going to paraphrase what I wrote in the forum because it's actually very relevant here. But I think the budget targets were like significantly supported. There was a little bit of lack of clarity or like critiques, namely budget implications following kind of current implications. I think, Chris, you mentioned this. It's like, this event budget, is it going to encompass Bogota? Is it going to encompass kind of the next year right after it? So that was kind of cleared up. The signal doesn't prevent spend above the targets, which I think was a little bit not well kind of orchestrated before. It kind of sets a running goal. Otherwise, if we want to spend above it, that's great. We just need to have a separate discussion, justification period, proposal, of course, which we already do, but it kind of gives that highlight, and I think governance will have a much tighter grasp on what those are, when or if we need to do those spends. And then, of course, soft consensus tightening through a combination of contributor relevancy, sponsorship limitations, contributor, like how close they are to the actual event, of course, is another consideration. I think that rather than a full reduction to one of them, ergo, we're going to have all our contributors, but we're not going to do any sponsorships, or we're going to have only a couple contributors and do all the sponsorships. So I think after that was cleared up, those felt pretty good. Strong consensus in discussions and the votes. The next one, committing to reducing the length and or frequency of public and internal weekly calls where appropriate. Sounds a bit different than the initial, post. And the reasoning is from the discussions. It was a bit unclear. Of course, that's what half of this is going to be. But Sky had some good comments on like kind of how that should look and the value of calls. So that was kind of adjusted to any way to reduce it rather than some kind of arbitrary, 30 minutes a week. So that way we can do bi-weekly calls at the current length and maybe have more focused calls. We can have 30-minute half calls, whatever that looks like. I think it's just the signal that we will move towards that. That's important here. Next up is DXgov will temporarily require all new contributors to pass a proposal on chain to start their engagement. Again, a bit different than the original text. It was the second most contentious forum vote, which of course is a good way to collect kind of broad consensus. I think it was 70% for. The initial concerns were that the action appeared, it was like the wording and framing wasn't exactly there. The action's now temporary, so it's imposed directly in the signal proposal that this is a measure that's imposed until phase 3. At that point, if we decide that it's more like, okay, this is working, we can kind of keep that and keep it running. Otherwise, this is just a measure temporarily until we've taken a step back and are realizing what we're doing and pushing towards that, which I think is the most important kind of aspect here, is that we don't know what we're doing. So let's figure out what we're doing, and then we can allow people to really fill those slots of what we want to do. So that's good. I said, on a personal level, I think this is kind of how the proposal process should work long-term in my eyes. I think that, we care a lot about on-chain actions, and the trial period right now is a little bit unclear in the sense that a lot of people will do that kind of 2 weeks and then submit a proposal. When I think that authorization of that trial period should probably come before the engagement in my eyes. In a lot of situations, of course, this is mostly referring to those that want to move to like a month-to-month kind of engagement. There are other engagements, of course, contractor, smaller time, individual working. Next condition, DXgov will launch a DXD guild with 4% rep and commit to further governance discussions to scale this rep percentage higher following deployment. We had a really good voting percentage here, actually, at 89% yes. There's some initial concern. It kind of implicated a narrow rep range. I think it was 25 to 30%, which of course was very arbitrary. There are some people that want less, there's some people that want more. So that text is adjusted to kind of commitment to scaling that rep percentage above the initial 4%, and like what that discussion will look like. Sorry to seeing Vicky's comment here. Approval before trial, the implication would be, this is what I want to do for my trial. This is the role I want to fill. Of course, that initial kind of forum post that we'd expect just on chain and pass. And then 6 final and most, sorry to see in the chat, hasn't always been the case. Technically, but also in practice, the last months, we have seen that not be executed upon. So I would say not really. Also, it's not really on chain either.
I think, Melanie, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's the 2 weeks. You basically post in the forum, and then 2 weeks later, you post on chain. But those 2 weeks are like the beginning of your trial period. That's what I think it's been before.
Yeah.
Which I mean, again, I think this is that's a slight difference in change. You can see how that will,
Yeah, it's very, very small change and temporary measure, of course, but I think it has a pretty large implication. Cool. And then the final point, DXgov will immediately disengage from contractors. This is very contentious, as I kind of indicated in the proposal. I expected it to be so. It was a 57% yes, 43% no. I kind of indicate here, you might think that I wouldn't include this in the low-hanging fruit due to its the signal of how contentious it was. I think, and I'm going to paraphrase myself pretty heavily here, I think there was initial lack of clarity surrounding the reasoning behind the disengagement, who exactly it was that was getting disengaged, and that it appeared to have an element of permanence, which of course was incorrect. The finality of these discussions kind of resonated as a soft consensus towards committing to the disengagement. First of all, because, sorry, let me clear up the actual conditions and the way I changed the text first. I think this action does not involve severing connections with any entity. If DXDAO in under a month, if we commit to phase 2, this could even be sooner depending on the state of the Signal proposal, how our discussions go. But if we can establish our priorities, justify them, and say what we want to be doing and commit towards it, I imagine Space Inch in this specific example would be a fantastic team to integrate into that process right away. But that is, of course, provided that we can decipher what that is exactly and how we're going to commit to it. And that's kind of what I say here in the second, is that we're taking a step back and evaluating. So there's obviously some challenges present, budget, goals, revenue, etc. This cut isn't personal performance based in any way. It lets us kind of take a step back financially, adjust our focus as an organization, and when we're ready to capitalize, be prepared to fire on all cylinders. We have a notice period anyway. No, so not immediately. Yeah, sorry. Immediately as in start the process. Maybe that wasn't entirely clear, but the implication of this signal would be disengage from our contractors at the earliest possible, I guess, contractual period. And I'm seeing Venki saying the same for Antracasa. We haven't been on retainer with Antracasa as a contractor. I would say probably no, in the sense that this is, and maybe this is where the lack of clarity came in, and I talked about this a bit on the forum. But it's like these contractors are the ones working directly for the DAO. Antracasa has a small commitment directly through the DX Voice multisig on and off. So I think it's kind of targeting those that are directly under the DXDAO umbrella, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, if anyone has any other opinion on that, but I think that was the finality of the conversation.
Awesome. Thanks.
Oh, sorry.
Comments? Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean I didn't mean I was done. I am almost done. But I meant if anyone has any other opinion on kind of that contractor, who that would encompass. If the interpretation of that is all contractors, assuming retainer engagements as well, we can kind of discuss what that looks like and how to evaluate that. Yeah, and I think, and this is the final thing here on the contractor side of things, but I think there was a lack of substantive written and or verbal pushback. Of course, this is opinion against the disengagement of contractors in this phase one. There was, of course, now Space Inch, if you haven't seen it already, they do have a forum post. They were kind of justifying why they have value, why it wouldn't make sense necessarily to disengage with them. I indicate that here in the forum. So you should consider that text, why. Yeah, I think that is the one. Yeah, perfect. Consider this text. They give a lot of context as to their engagement, why they think disengagement would be not a great outcome. And at the same time, there are a lot of discussions here on the forum, in the Discord, and I think the governance call last week and community call even, that ran through a lot of good reasons as to why it would make sense to commit to those disengagements. So lots of context here in the forum. I'm going to link the actual post that justifies everything. It's a comment on the signal proposal in the forum. Take a look there if you haven't already. It would be fantastic to get high voter turnout, of course, on something such as this. So appreciating the process so far. I guess I gave a little thank you earlier, but professional and productive is two words I would definitely use for this alternative restructuring, and I'm very thankful to everyone here that's been participating. So thank you for that. Looking forward to seeing this conclude in the forum, or sorry, in our governance space.
Keenan, if I could just ask a question. So, I think this logic has come through in the discussions. It wasn't very clear from the start, but it's a valid argument, is that like, instead of having these things ongoing and regular, where there's a bunch of things like audits and third-party contract dev shops and design shops, Antracasa and stuff, instead of having them ongoing, and I haven't read Space Inch's whole post, but like, we're stopping them, and then we take the approach that we have to justify the additional spend. So like, DXDAO on a one-off basis can still decide to hire Antracasa. DXDAO can still decide to hire Space Inch if it identifies, a 2 months work of something. DXDAO is considering audits. There's proposals for audits, which is spend on audits, and so we're basically just saying, instead of justifying why not to stop these things, we now have to justify why the DAO has to justify why to spend on these things. But like, the money can still be spent. Like, theoretically, if the DAO still decides to do any of these things, the money can still be spent, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think you actually implied it, but framing is really, I think, the most important part. Just because this is a signal proposal on chain doesn't, have any on-chain implications in the sense that this code is being altered and we can, adjust the way that we spend our budget. So this is really just kind of a signaling that's saying, okay, 150K, that works within the kind of budget that the squad's provided, their expected costs over the running 6 months, annualized. Let's kind of use that as a soft target. That makes sense to do. If we want to do anything else, which I expect that we do, we just need to call attention to it and say this is why it's important, as opposed to committing to it and then justifying that budget later in the year. It's kind of just moving that goalpost of why we want to do this and justifying that to before the process, which of course you could argue that we have done in certain cases, but it allows us to really be gung-ho on the initiatives that we know that we want to commit to, up into this arbitrary kind of soft deadline, maybe not a perfect amount, but it allows us to be like, okay, we've reached that target for the year. This product has lots of traction. It's going to be a revenue generating tool for DXgov. Let's commit to an audit for this. This is why that's important. This is how much that's going to cost, right? And I think that's kind of the framing that this wants to set up, as being more conscious of the budget. And if we are more conscious of the budget in general, that will allow us to kind of select our priorities a little bit better. Like, okay, maybe we don't need to audit this product. It's not going to make money. Here's the financial justification as to why it won't make money. Alternatively, events. Maybe we don't need to do this event. Maybe this one doesn't have a value add. Maybe this one we can have less contributors attending, or only more relevant contributors, or only those that are in closer proximity and will have a lower net cost. It kind of lets us reference and have a frame in mind for that. I think that's the most important part in my eyes. I don't see it as a massive paradigm shift related to the budget. It's more of a framing.
And the current proposal around the budget of governance 1.5 or whatever, I think Chris, you shared earlier, like, is that fitting into this discussion around audit costs, or is this for the going forward after that one's done? Like, how does that need to be discussed for that one as well?
Yeah, and I think like I said, the important thing is kind of framing / signaling. I think DXgov can interpret whether Bogota or this governance 1.5. I haven't looked at the proposal here. I don't think. So I just want to bring it up. But I think it's kind of like up for DXgov to determine whether or not those should be encompassed by the Sigma proposal. My opinion would be that Bogota doesn't make sense. Those were kind of established costs before this process started. And for the auditing, it probably makes sense to include that in that budget, because as I'm understanding, we kind of put together a trailing 6-month budget some months ago that this included. So that does make sense to me to include. But of course, the important thing is that is, a process that DXgov is like, okay, this makes sense to include, doesn't.
Cool. Other thoughts, comments? Yeah, I guess just maybe two thoughts for me. I think first, I think with DAOs and really any organization, but especially like one that's kind of spread out, decentralized, it can be difficult to get things done, to try and push things forward. I think a lot of times, this is true actually in any democracy, right? At the end of the day, like, it's hard to do things because there's all these obstacles to moving things forward. So I think even when there is, maybe like, oh, I'm not sure if this will work. I'm not sure if this will kind of end up being the right decision. I think there is something, especially in DXgav's early formation, where we're trying to figure out how everything works. I think there is a big value to experimentation and seeing how things kind of work. And I think going through the process and doing that, where you can learn a lot, even if things do not pan out as well as it originally intended. And I think second is the understanding the text and meaning behind things is very important. And this is like probably, a little boring for everyone to nitpick over words here, but I really do think they do say that, it is trying to communicate something that everyone can look back to, right? This is when you have company policies that no one follows, but people kind of know they're there in the background, and maybe they can get changed. Maybe they're not actually that enforceable, but they do have like some ability to that. And as much as the text of it is important and really understanding it, and that's why like some of my comments were more about like, let's just really drill down specifically what this is so we can all a better understanding. But in addition to the text, I also think the conversation about it also kind of dictates things on how things should be received by the community. And it is kind of interesting. Yeah, this is a signal proposal, right? That this would kind of establish these actions for DXgov to take. But there is like, I don't know, DXgov is kind of a wild stallion in the sense where like if DXgov passes a proposal next week that contradicts this, it's hard for this proposal to like enforce a future proposal. But I think it is something that can kind of send a signal that is really much more about the community and contributors, like recognizing and acknowledging something maybe that DXgov governance has passed, and then having to like kind of use that as a guide going forward. So yeah, I think, just to repeat those, like one, DAOs and democracies can run into stasis very quickly. So I think it is important to make sure we're experimenting, even if things don't work out. We can learn from those mistakes there. And then secondly, it is worth nitpicking over some of the text here, because I think it is important just to understand what the message itself is trying to convey. And that's like a broader sense of communication. Cool. Other thoughts, comments?
I guess I just wanted to say that completely agree with those thoughts, Chris. Nail on the head, even. And I think, like the communication aspect, kind of this discussion period is supporting the signal proposal in a way, providing context, allowing everyone to reach that understanding, I think. So when I see like pushback in the sense like, oh, this isn't clear, that's not, I think, a negative of the proposal. It's more of a, we're discussing and reaching that kind of understanding and what exactly this means.
One could argue that it's not actually this proposal passing that is important, but that the actual important thing was the discussion itself and how kind of like things unroll, right? It's not just, oh, these words passed. It's like DXgov went through this process, and like there was a lot of learning. Even people that won't vote for it, even people that disagree with it, like that process itself is actually what the point is.
The important thing was the discussions we had along the way.
No friends. No friends.
Yeah, no friends. Making no friends.
There's also an expression, putting the cart before the horse. And like up until now, it seems like we were operating in a model similar to that. Like we had the growth and expenditure without having the strategy goal. And now we're shifting things around and putting the horse in front of the cart. Of course, this is an interim solution. This is not the solution, actually. It's just a way to restructure things that could help us find the solution. But it's necessary. It's like a milestone.
Awesome. Other comments, you can leave them in the forum here. And this has got 3.5 days left to vote. Cool. And then next discussion item, transitioning from GPV1 to CowSwap for buybacks. Unfortunately, you're going to have to listen to me go over this because I think Dave is dealing with a little bit with the altitude adjustment in Bogota there. But Dave posted this yesterday. And so, for background, obviously the DXD buyback program has been going on for a year and a half. All of those buybacks have gone through Gnosis Protocol V1. 85% of those have gone through Gnosis Protocol V1 on Gnosis Chain, and then the rest were actually on Mainnet too. And all of those, the process for those that we kind of outlined, that is, there's a relayer that has the funds, and then you need a proposal that actually programs an order to be placed on GPV1, and then you actually need someone or any address that actually needs to execute that order, and it takes actually 3 transactions. It's a little tricky to be able to do that, and then that places the order on GPV1, and then anyone can come in and fill that order there. That process that I described is cumbersome, and that kind of is before you even introduce OWL, which is a liquidity token in Gnosis Protocol that it is required for Gnosis Protocol to function, and you basically need to have liquidity for OWL in order to function any of those. So this has not been, we've had problems with this in the past, just kind of adjusting it. And we've had Adam has done a really great job of kind of like making sure this is like kept up to date, both in terms of like the solvers itself are running, right? That costs, I think, something like $40-50 a month to actually run the solvers for GPV1, because of course no one else is using GPV1, in addition to like additional overhead in terms of execution. But this past week, I don't know if GPV1 is broken or if OWL is just so little liquidity, but the buyback orders the past week have not been filled. So I think it's time that we move towards a different mechanism to conduct the buybacks. And so this is a post about basically switching the buybacks from GPV1 to CowSwap for buybacks. And so we have already done a test proposal for this. Let's see if I can, probably there. Yeah. So we've already done a test proposal for this, where we traded DAI to WEF through GPV2. And you can see here, this was a 1,500 WX DAI to buy WEF. I think it was at like 1,600 WEF, another bad trade by Dave here. But yeah, so this worked, I think it was 2 weeks ago here, to do WX DAI to WEF. And then this would be basically switching it to switching the buyback to go through that same process. And so the way that it works is you actually, anyone basically creates an order on CowSwap from the DXgov avatar on Gnosis Chain, and it creates that order, and it basically submits it to Cow Protocol. But in order for that order to be live, it actually needs to be signed by the DXgov avatar. So that's what this proposal itself is. It's actually, well, I guess first you need to approve the WX DAI, and then you're basically calling a function that signs this order on behalf of DXgov. So that's how it would move going forward. Dave or myself or anyone could basically set an order to purchase WETH for DXD, and then there would be a separate proposal that would sign that order. There are some big differences between using the GPV1 relayer and doing this. The biggest difference is that when we use the relayer, we were able to use basically place a limit order by looking at an oracle at the current DXD ETH price. But with GPV2 or CowSwap, these trades would actually just be happening at market buys. And so when you're happening at market buys, that means you're not actually, you're just tapping into the existing liquidity and not caring as much for what the price would be there. So here we have introduced maybe something like 10% slippage. That's just because there's really not that much liquidity on Gnosis Chain for this. So if you look here, we're on CowSwap here. Let me see what and so Dave and I were talking about, if we do this, like what is the size trade that we want to be able to do here, where it makes sense and kind of doesn't release too much slippage. So I think if you look at something like, so looking at 5 WETH for DXD, you can see that would actually be basically like 8.8% slippage, and that would mean you'd be paying at 0.313 DXD ETH, and I think like the current rate is like 0.275 or something like that. So that would obviously spike the price up enough, and this would actually spike the price up on the pool even higher. The pool would probably go to like 0.34 because this 0.3135 is actually an average price that you would get, and not what the pool itself will be left at after. So yeah, I guess the kind of questions to everyone were one, like, does this make sense? Is this okay to move forward with this? I think the current plan would be to try to test this out as soon as possible. We even submit a order this afternoon that we can kind of see if that works. So does this make sense? And then 2, any comments on the size of the proposal or the slippage here? Because obviously it does prevent DXDAO maybe from getting as much DXD because there's a higher slippage, but given the low liquidity, it's really hard to do it other ways. So yeah, any comments on this overall, and then specifically on like the order size and the slippage? Oh, yeah, there's soup. Yeah, so GPV2. So basically, like when you use GPV2, you're like cutting out the middleman, and the middleman is not. Yeah, it because sometimes can be a single address that has been doing a lot of these, but that address is basically going and trying to fill that limit order on GPV1, and then in order to do that, they have to go source liquidity from Swapper and elsewhere to actually get that DXD. Whereas here, DXDAO is just buying directly from GPV2 or directly from Swapper. And so here, actually, when you're looking at this, it's here. I don't know if they show us did they show you the route it's taken? No. But this is actually presumably going through both the WETH DXD pool and also the GNO DXD pool on Swapper. Great forum, yes. It's a great forum post. Cool. Yeah. Oh, so I didn't know that. So Dave is actually, you're creating this through like, yeah, like a command line interface. So maybe I'm not. I can learn how to do that. Cool. So maybe be on the lookout for some orders over the next couple of days. And I think we'll evaluate like as they get executed, how that'll kind of like adjust the price. And presumably if the price jumps up on Swapper on Gnosis Chain, like that means there's a huge arbitrage opportunity on Mainnet and Arbitrum to do that. And if the price jumps up, who knows like how different DXD holders may kind of go into that. And then just a little bit of a preview of tomorrow. We have the DXD token working group call number 3. But in addition to talking about the new DXD token model, we've also been using these calls as an opportunity to talk a little bit more in depth about DXD liquidity. And so one of the great things about CowSwap that we can use is we can also use that on Mainnet. And on Mainnet, I think if we can talk to the CowSwap team, we could actually place limit orders on Mainnet. And so this would basically, I think, be like another way of doing the DXD buyback, maybe even in conjunction with the market buys on Gnosis Chain. So we'll go over some options maybe on how that might play out, because we have just about $60,000 left in buyback extension number 9 that is still used to purchase DXD, but there's already $500,000 that's been authorized to purchase. And so figuring out a plan for how to use that $500,000 to execute the buyback, probably both involving limit orders on Mainnet and also market buys on Gnosis Chain. Cool. And then, yeah, the last, maybe not 2 items, but if you want to talk about, there's a couple of just great posts that are up. Ali has got some updates to the contributor proposal process here. And so I don't know, Ali, if you want to call, you could mentioned this, but I think it was just posted yesterday, the day before, and she's been getting some great feedback from some people, and there's some changes in here, so make sure and check that out. Now, if you want to add anything, feel free.
Yeah, for sure. So this is the second post, or the second draft post in a series of drafts that the Contributor X Squad plans on releasing regarding contributor guidelines updates. So this one specifically addresses contributor proposal updates that we want to make. So the first couple, title, format, recaps, and reflections, they're going to mainly stay the same. We just kind of want to tighten it up and clean it up a little bit. But we really want to get some feedback on the proposal period, proposal cadence, and the process of posting in the forum and on-chain. So I put some polls in this post because we want to get as much feedback as possible to see how people feel about the proposal process, and to just get a feel of what people think would be easier, what they think would be better for the proposal process. So the proposal period, we're basically debating between month to month and workable days. Right now, we don't have any guidance surrounding when a contributor proposal should start and finish. Some people start on the first of the month. Some proposals start in the middle of the month. So we just wanted to kind of clear that up and see what people would prefer. For a proposal cadence, we were wondering if people would feel comfortable moving to a 3-month proposal cadence. This is something that Melanie and I have heard being chatted about a lot, and we think people are interested in it. So we want to hear what people think. And then within the poll question is, after how much time of successful contribution with DXgov do you think contributors should be allowed to move to a 3-month proposal cadence? And of course, with the 3-month proposal cadence, if people want workable days instead of a month-to-month proposal period, then that would be 60. It would be 60 workable days within a 3-month period. And then the last one, the process of posting in the forum and on-chain. We have a couple of different approaches that we wrote up based on feedback that we received. And then the last approach is basically give us more ideas. If you don't like approach A or B, like if you have an idea that's something in the middle, a combination of the two, something that's completely different that we haven't even thought of yet, we are completely open to any ideas that anyone has. So yes, please, I will leave a link here in the chat. We would love to get as much feedback as possible. So go vote on those polls and leave us some comments about what you think. Oh, you beat me to it. Oh. Well, thank you anyway, Key.
And so just to understand this proposal one, so you're saying like if there was a 3-month proposal that would take September, October, and November, and that would cover 60 workable days, or you would have like 60 workable days that may start September 1st to like November 20th or something.
Yeah, so that's like the difference between the two. So if we were to go month to month, it would be September 1st to November 30th.
Yeah, just from an accounting perspective, it's a disaster not to run things on a monthly basis. Like that's the whole reason for this. It's like you can kind of have as many workable days you have, but like if you have to constantly be adjusting the like length of a proposal, like that can be really difficult to do.
No, yeah, I know. Yeah. I mean, yeah, we were kind of suggesting for everyone to go start on the 1st and end at the end of the following month. That's definitely
and I guess
better.
Is the workable days, is that been in any DXgov like governance? I mean, like any contributor guidelines before? Like I'm not sure like where that concept came from.
I think it might have been me actually initially. I have a couple of proposals on chain that followed that, and I noticed they of course passed. And I think that it's Keen's been wanting this forever. Yeah, I think it was definitely the least stress period for me was focusing on those 40 workable days, and the main reason is the proposal flexibility. If I focus on 40 workable days, I take off 2 days. The only difference for me is simply adjusting that end date in the final proposal. So my next proposal starts on that next day immediately after. wasn't really prepared to shill workable days, but it was definitely the easiest, least stress proposal creation time for me, I would say.
Yeah.
Felt like it really rolled off of each other, and it felt like I was more easier to do, like
for the individual. It's like it just like it's really hard to standardize these things, and I'm not like trying to like because
exactly,
then you just have to like go through. And I think like it's fine if people want to do 20 workable days per month and take off like I don't know more of that time in there, but like running things on a monthly cadence just seems like that's how
Yeah, and I think really this is the difference between good for the individual and good for the organization. Like if you really boil it down, of course, it's not that black and white. Yeah, I think it's like my main question is: say I am sick and don't work on like a Friday of the month, like the last day of the month or something, and I submit that proposal. I think every month is a little bit different size wise. So if you take a day off in a month, that's 31 days, 29 days. Are we being like exact with those increases? I'm assuming the individual will want to be compensated for the time. So what would that look like, right? And I don't interpret that to be a massive difference.
I mean, I think like I'm not sorry to, but like I think every company, like they just do like monthly. And yes, February has 28 days and like August has 31 days. But I just think it creates more overhead, like more headache to try to like not just take like just do the month.
Yeah,
but we can maybe chat about this in the morning.
I heard the recording is on, lady. Peek in there.
Yeah, I mean that's conversation has been per month the whole time.
Yeah, and I think there's the question is more so, and this we can take this as a form, but the question is more so like how exactly we're handling like. So I think a lot of people are saying I took a day off. That is what like percentage of that proposal, and adjusting to a monthly cadence that is workable days is still a monthly cadence. It just allows us to have better accounting of what happened in those periods. 1 day off of a 40-day contributor period is much easier to account for, in my opinion, than 1 day off a percentage kind of the larger period. Not forcing, but having that forcing function of monthly is great for accounting and easier to keep track of for us, but maybe doesn't always make sense for someone that wants to take a week off, and then how exactly they, the ease of doing that process. Anyways, we can take that to the form. I don't want to.
I think in most companies, 22 working days is like standard in a month.
Yeah,
because that's like what you average out to. So day to day llama pay. Now Dave's gonna say llama.
Yeah, llama pay. I was gonna say let's talk llama pay.
Sorry, this was like I thought we had like I was just gonna go through this and go to the forum, but I couldn't help myself. Keenan, do you want to give us a brief rundown of this post, and then we can call it a day here?
Absolutely.
Future of am I on? Yeah.
I feel like the king of governance today. Hopefully, I'm not boring anyone here. But yeah, the future of swapper emissions. As you know, the swapper token squad has been handling emissions over the last year. Those emissions, as indicated in the swapper token signal proposal, are coming to an end. They authorize a portion of the initial token supply towards 1 year of liquidity mining. So those are coming to an end, and that's I guess tomorrow now for Arbitrum, and then Gnosis Chain will have one more epoch, which is a 2-week period, and that is being extended over the course of this coming month. So this forum post here, to keep it super brief, basically just kind of highlights the current stipulations, the signal proposal, what that distribution looks like, and points to the fact that there will be a signal proposal, snapshot vote, easy to conflate those two. That kind of runs through, what the community wants to push towards as next steps for the token. What does that look like? What kind of model can we go through? Do we want to halt emissions entirely? I think just getting a signal from the community is really good here. The swapper token squad has a pretty good idea of what we think the best outcome will be. And I think it's kind of just justifying that and getting everyone on board with that concept and kind of laying the options on the table before executing on it. So basically that is that, and kind of pointing to this as a discussion avenue that points to a larger kind of change in, I guess, a month from now, starting tomorrow. So expect some swapper discussions over the course of this coming month.
Awesome. Any thoughts on swapper before we're Swapper token. Cool. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining. Sorry, I thought we were going to have a shorter time here, but yeah, I hope we got through some stuff there. And yeah, I think by next week, I will not be, but I think a lot of contributors will be in Colombia. So yeah, everyone have a safe travels down south or up north. Do we want to discuss calls? Maybe Friday.
Okay.
Just yeah, or someone wants to have strong opinions. I feel like I'm strong opinion out.
The strong opinions 5 minutes before top of the hour.
Cool. All right. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you, Chris.
Everyone.
Bye.
Thanks.